Okay, so imagine you just open a new bank account
Right.
and suddenly you're caught up in criminal activity.
Hmm.
Like you've become what's called a money mule,
Yeah.
and you might not even know it.
You might not even know it, right? Yeah.
It's scary, right? And it's a growing problem. Like cases are increasing a lot.
Yeah.
Like Lloyd's Bank reported a 44% increase just last year.
It's not just isolated incidents either. It's
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, if you're following the news at all, you've probably seen this.
Yeah.
BBC has done features highlighting like the LE human cost.
Oh, wow.
The National Crime Agency has reported, a surge in arrests.
Yeah, I mean it's everywhere.
It is, and what's kind of scary about it is that a lot of people become money mules unknowingly, right?
Right.
They don't realize their account's being used for
Exactly.
illicit purposes.
Yeah, it's like it kind of makes you feel vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable, absolutely.
Um, so to get a better idea of what's happening and how we can protect ourselves, we're gonna dive into this recent review
Yeah.
by the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA.
Yep.
They're the UK's financial watchdog.
Big dogs.
So what they have to say carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about this review is it doesn't just expose the problem, but it also reveals kind of some gaps in how effectively banks and financial institutions are actually using the tools that they have
Oh, okay.
that are already available
Interesting.
to combat money muling. So it's not even that.
No, they have tools. They're just not using them, right?
That's a huge takeaway.
Oh, wow.
There are things they can do.
Okay, so let's break down this FCA review.
Yeah.
What exactly were they looking at?
Sure. So primarily, they were interested in two key areas.
Okay.
First, they looked at how firms are utilizing the National Fraud Database, the NFD.
Okay.
That's a centralized system for tracking and reporting fraud,
Mm-hmm.
including cases involving money mules. And second, they examined how firms are using a specialized money mule account detection tool that traces funds across the UK's faster payment system.
Okay.
So think of that as a real-time tracker
Oh, interesting.
that can spot suspicious money flows.
So they're looking back at what's happened, but they're also kind of like watching as it's happening.
Exactly. They wanted to see how these tools
Yeah.
were being utilized
Okay.
to really identify and prevent these money muling activities.
Just stop it.
Exactly. And what they found, pretty startling, I think. They discovered that between January 2022 and September 2023,
Okay.
25 firms had identified nearly 200,000 potential money mules.
200,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
But only 37%
Oh.
of those cases were reported to the NFD.
Wait, so the majority of these potential money mules
53%, yeah.
weren't even reported to like the system.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
It is
That's a massive disconnect.
huge.
Yeah.
And it really, it points to some big missed opportunities.
Right.
One of the key problems that the FCA uncovered
Yeah.
is that many firms aren't doing real-time checks against the NFD
Okay.
after a customer opens an account.
Oh, so they're waiting until something happens instead of being preventative?
Yeah, so they might be missing critical updates for months, even years,
Wow.
leaving them exposed to fraud that they could have prevented.
So they onboard a customer and then they just kind of like hope for the best.
They just cross their fingers and hope that.
Seems like a really bad approach.
The FCA seemed to think so.
Yeah.
They also found a worrying lack of consistency across different firms,
Okay.
right? So some institutions reported far fewer cases than others,
Oh, interesting.
despite handling similar volumes of accounts.
Okay.
So there was this one firm that reported a shockingly low 6%.
6%.
Yeah, only 6%
Oh my gosh.
of their identified money mules. So
That's so low.
yeah, it raises questions about their detection and reporting practices.
Yeah, if they have the tools, like why aren't they using them?
Right, that's the question.
Right.
The FCA wanted to get to the bottom of that.
Okay.
So they dug a little deeper to try and understand
Yeah.
the reasons behind this underreporting.
Okay.
So some firms expressed concerns about meeting the NFD's high evidential standard,
Okay.
which requires them to prove that the mule knowingly moved criminal funds.
So like intent.
Intent, exactly.
Okay.
Proving intent, that can be difficult.
Yeah, especially if the person doesn't even know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a real challenge.
Okay.
But here's where it gets, I think, interesting.
Okay.
The FCA actually pushed back on this.
Oh.
They argued that many of the cases that they reviewed actually did meet the criteria
Oh.
for reporting.
So they're being too careful.
I think they're being overly cautious.
Oh, wow.
And they believe that more reports should be filed even when intent is difficult to establish.
So it seems like maybe they're more concerned about protecting themselves
Potentially, yeah.
than the greater good.
Potentially.
Yeah.
That's one of the big takeaways, I think, from this.
Yeah.
The FCA also found that some firms have internal policies that arbitrarily exclude certain cases from being reported.
Like what?
So, for example, they might not report attempted fraud or cases where the loss falls below a certain value.
But wouldn't any information be good?
You would think, right.
Right.
You would think any information about potential fraud,
Like even a little bit?
regardless of scale, would be helpful.
Yeah.
But it appears that some institutions are prioritizing their own internal metrics
Really?
over the broader fight against fraud.
That's pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
What else? What other reasons did they give for not reporting?
Another factor that they cited was the difficulty in proving a customer's willing involvement,
Okay.
especially when there's a possibility of coercion or exploitation.
So if they've been forced to.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in those cases, they're choosing to not report them.
Just to protect the person.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
But that raises the question.
That's a good question.
Right. Is that the best way to protect vulnerable individuals in the long run?
In the long run, yeah.
And the FCA report suggests that there's a need for a more nuanced approach,
Right.
one that balances the need for reporting with the need to protect.
Right. It's tough.
It's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, and then it gets even more complicated when you start talking about like how they're actually using this money mule detection tool.
Right.
Like how good are they at using that?
Yeah, and I think what's particularly interesting here
Yeah.
is that the FCA found that firms are often being too passive
Oh.
in their use of the tool. Yeah. So they might wait.
What does that mean?
So they might wait for multiple risk factors
Okay.
to appear before taking action, or they might only focus on what are called first-generation mules.
First-generation mules.
Yeah.
What is that?
So these are the individuals who directly receive the money from the initial fraud victim.
Oh, so they're waiting until it's kind of like spread more
Yeah, they're not catching it.
before they do anything.
Yeah, early on.
Wow, so they could stop it earlier and they're just not.
Yeah, and some firms are also relying on these arbitrary thresholds,
Like what?
like the value of a transaction
Oh, okay.
to decide which alerts warrant an investigation.
So if it's a small amount, they're just like whatever.
Yeah, so those smaller, seemingly insignificant transactions might be slipping through the cracks, even if they're part of a larger scheme.
Oh, so it could be like a test run almost.
Potentially.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing is just making me like nervous about like my own bank account.
Right, and I think, it does paint kind of a concerning picture
Yeah, for sure.
of how some institutions are handling this
It's
threat.
a growing threat.
Yeah, it's a growing problem for sure.
Okay, but I mean, were there any like positive takeaways from this review?
Oh yeah, definitely. There were some bright spots.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there were a few.
Okay.
The FCA highlighted several good practices, such as firms using advanced technology, things like facial recognition,
Oh, wow.
device profiling, geolocation during onboarding.
We're tracking where people are and stuff.
Yeah, and they're using this to identify potential risks early on.
Oh, okay.
So they're being proactive.
So some institutions are being more proactive.
Yeah, and they also saw positive examples of data sharing between firms
Oh, that's good.
and some really robust staff training programs
Oh, that's important.
focused on fraud prevention.
Like actually knowing what to look for.
Yeah, giving their staff the tools and the training.
So some are doing it right.
Yeah, and the FCA is encouraging more of that
Oh, good.
kind of proactive and collaborative approach.
Collaboration is key.
They're urging firms to share data more widely, particularly on suspected mules.
Right.
While still, being mindful of protecting vulnerable customers. But this kind of information sharing can help.
It's all about balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Help create a more comprehensive defense system against financial crime.
I mean, it seems like they could learn from each other, right?
Absolutely.
The ones that are doing it well can kind of show the ones that aren't, like, hey, this is what you should be doing.
Yeah. The FCA also emphasized the importance of consumer education.
Education.
Especially, now with the cost of living crisis.
Right, which is, yeah.
Potentially making people more vulnerable to becoming money mules.
Just a hard time.
So they're urging firms to step up their efforts in raising awareness about the risks.
Yeah.
And how to spot these potential scams.
Yeah, that's a good point because, like, if people know what to look for,
they're less likely to fall victim.
They won't fall victim to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And that brings us back to, what does this mean for us?
Yeah, for the average person listening.
For everyday people.
Yeah, what do we need to know?
It really underscores the importance of being vigilant and informed.
Okay.
We have to be cautious about those, get-rich-quick schemes.
Oh, yeah, those.
Or requests to use your account for others' transactions.
Yeah.
No matter how harmless they may seem.
That's a good point.
If something sounds too good to be true.
It probably is.
It probably is.
Yeah.
And there are some really excellent resources available.
What?
To learn more about fraud prevention. So, places like the FCA's website.
Oh, okay.
CFIS.
So, like, actually doing your research.
Do your research. And of course, reporting any suspected fraud to your bank and the relevant authorities.
Immediately, right?
Immediately. The faster you act.
The better.
The better the chance of stopping these criminals.
Stopping them, yeah.
And protecting yourself and others.
Yeah, okay, so given all these gaps.
Right.
And inconsistencies, like, is the financial industry doing enough?
That's the question.
Yeah.
That we need to be asking, right?
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, based on what we've seen so far, it seems like there's room for improvement.
There's a lot of room for improvement.
A lot of room for improvement, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that we all need to think about, right?
We need to be more aware.
More aware, be more proactive.
Hold them accountable.
Absolutely, yeah. Hold them accountable.
Yeah.
How can we demand better protection?
Yeah.
From these institutions?
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's really good information to know. And I think it makes you feel a little bit more empowered, right?
Absolutely.
If you know what to look for and what's happening.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we're not done yet. We're going to be back with part 2, where we dig a little deeper into some of these red flags and systemic weaknesses.
And what you can do about it.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yep.
Welcome back. We've been talking about money mules and how financial institutions are responding to this growing problem.
Yeah, and I think one of the most concerning things that the FCA found is that institutions are missing these basic red flags.
Oh, so like the everyday transactions that should be setting off alarm bells.
Exactly. The things that in hindsight seem pretty obvious.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Like, what kind of red flags are we talking about?
So think about something like a large deposit into a new account.
Okay.
That far exceeds the customer's stated income.
Right.
Or unusual activity that doesn't align with the nature of their business.
So they're not doing their due diligence, basically.
Yeah, not as much as they could be. And those rapid fire transactions in a short period.
Like sending money quickly to lots of different places.
Exactly. That's a classic indicator.
Yeah.
Often associated with money laundering.
So it sounds like maybe the issue is with how their fraud detection systems are set up internally.
Well, one of the concerns that the FCA raised is that some firms aren't collecting basic customer information.
Like what?
Like salary or business turnover during the onboarding process.
Oh, so they don't really know.
So they don't have that baseline data to compare against. So it becomes much harder to spot unusual activity later on.
That's like trying to find a counterfeit bill without knowing what a real one looks like.
Exactly. You need that point of comparison.
You need to know what to look for.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, the FCA found that some firms struggled to produce basic customer ID documents.
Oh, wow.
When needed. So that's a major compliance issue.
That's not good.
Yeah, it hinders their ability to effectively detect fraud.
So they're missing information from the start, and then they can't even access the information they do have.
Yeah, it's a It's a bit of a troubling combination.
Not reassuring.
Not reassuring at all.
It's like they're relying too much on those external databases.
Yeah, they're being a bit passive.
Okay, so are they doing enough?
That's the question, right? I mean, based on what we've seen,
That doesn't sound like it.
there's definitely room for improvement.
What can they do? Like, what are some concrete steps that these institutions can take?
Well, I mean, we've talked about some of them already. Stronger onboarding checks are crucial.
Okay.
Going beyond just verifying someone's identity,
Okay.
collecting and analyzing relevant financial information.
So, like, actually getting to know their customer.
Yeah, from the outset.
Okay, so more discerning about who they give accounts to in the first place.
Yeah, and being more attentive to what happens.
After the account is open.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
They also need to implement more robust transaction monitoring systems.
What does that mean?
So systems that can adapt to evolving fraud tactics,
Yeah.
right? Because the FCA found that some firms are relying on these static rules.
So the criminals are just like one step ahead.
Yeah, they're figuring out ways to circumvent those rules. So embracing advanced technology, things like machine learning,
Oh, AI.
behavioral biometrics.
So using technology more effectively.
Yeah, and let's not forget the human element, right?
Right.
Proper staff training is absolutely crucial.
Right, because they're the ones that are seeing these transactions.
Exactly. Even with all the technology in the world, you're still vulnerable if your staff aren't equipped to spot suspicious activity.
It's about the whole organization being aware, not just the people at the top.
That's a culture, yeah.
Yeah.
The FCA is also advocating for greater collaboration and data sharing between firms.
Okay, so working together.
Working together, yeah. This is essential for disrupting those larger criminal networks that operate across multiple institutions.
So sharing information about potential money mules and patterns and things like that.
Yeah, so that they can build a more comprehensive defense system.
Instead of just trying to protect themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
And it's also about recognizing that this isn't just a financial industry problem.
Right, it affects everyone.
This is a societal problem.
Yeah.
And that's why the FCA is urging firms to ramp up their consumer education efforts, especially now with the cost of living crisis.
Which makes people more vulnerable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People are desperate.
So raising awareness so people know what to look for.
Exactly. Empowering people with the knowledge.
And the tools to protect themselves.
Yeah, and we started by talking about how the FCA report highlighted some worrying gaps.
Yeah, it was a little scary.
Yeah, but as we've been, exploring these issues.
I'm starting to feel like a sense of optimism.
Oh, good.
Because it seems like there's a real opportunity here for positive change.
Yeah, I think so too. Like it's like a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call.
But also like, okay, here's what we can do.
Yeah, here's a roadmap.
Yeah.
So if firms take these recommendations seriously.
Yeah.
And commit to a more proactive and collaborative approach.
Yeah.
We could see a real shift in this fight against money muling.
It would make everyone safer.
Absolutely.
Institutions themselves would be safer.
Less people would be victims.
Less people would be victims.
It's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely, a win-win for everyone.
So it's not just about the banks changing. It's about individuals being aware.
Yes, a collective effort.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a collective effort. And this brings us back to, why these deep dives are so important.
Education.
Knowledge.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so we're going to wrap up part 2 here. But we're not done yet. We'll be back with part 3, where we delve into some real-life case studies and practical steps
What you can do.
you can take to protect yourself. Stay tuned. All right, so welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into money mules.
Yep.
We've talked about the problem. We've talked about what the institutions are doing or not doing.
Right.
But now let's talk about what you, the listener, can do to protect yourself.
Yeah, how to stay safe out there.
Yeah, exactly. Like what are the things we need to watch out for so we don't become a money mule?
Yeah, and I think, the first line of defense, like we said before, is awareness.
Right.
Right. Understanding how these schemes work.
Okay.
Recognizing the red flags. Knowledge is power.
Okay, so let's talk about red flags. Like, what are some specific things that people should be on the lookout for?
Be wary of any unsolicited offers, especially online.
Oh, yeah.
That promise easy money for little to no effort.
Okay, like get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah, those too good to be true schemes. They often prey on people that are struggling financially,
Right. Yeah.
promising quick cash
Sure.
for simply moving funds through your account.
So like those work from home opportunities that you see all over the place.
Yeah, those are classic examples. Another red flag is being asked to receive money into your account
Okay.
and then transfer it to someone else,
Okay.
often in a different country.
Right.
The person requesting this might claim that it's a legitimate business transaction,
Right.
but in reality, it's often a way to launder money.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that even if you don't know like what's happening,
Right.
you could still get into trouble,
Absolutely.
like legal trouble.
Yeah. You could face legal charges. You could damage your credit score.
Yeah.
You can even find yourself blacklisted
Really?
by financial institutions,
Oh my God.
making it difficult to access essential financial services in the future.
So it's not just about the money; it's about like your whole
Financial life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just about your finances either.
Okay.
It's also about protecting your identity.
Right.
Money mules are often asked to provide personal information.
Like what?
Their bank account details, obviously social security number, driver's license. These are things that
They can be used for identity theft.
exactly.
Oh wow.
And criminals can use this information to commit identity theft.
Hmm.
Open fraudulent accounts in your name.
So be really careful who you give that information to.
Very careful, very careful.
Okay, so let's say you've been careful. You're pretty sure you haven't been caught up in any of this.
Right.
Like what can you do to protect yourself? Like what are some things?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the simplest but most effective things you can do is regularly review your bank account statements.
Okay.
Look for any unfamiliar transactions.
So don't just like glance over it.
Don't just glance over it. No.
Mhm.
Take the time to scrutinize those statements.
Really look closely.
Yeah, if you see something suspicious, no matter how small,
Yeah.
report it to your bank immediately.
Immediately.
Don't hesitate.
Okay.
You can also set up alerts on your
Also
account.
alerts, yeah.
Yeah.
To notify you of like unusual activity.
Yeah, large withdrawals, large transfers, things like
So
that.
you can catch it right away.
Right away.
So that's a good tip. I like that.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
Right.
There are resources available.
Okay, like what?
Websites like Action Fraud,
Okay.
the FCA's Consumer Hub.
They have a whole hub.
They do.
Oh, wow.
That offers valuable information on fraud prevention and reporting suspicious activity.
So if you do think you've been like scammed or something.
Yeah, they provide guidance on what to do.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know. It's nice to know there's help out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I mean, we've talked about a lot.
We have
But if you could just leave our listeners with like one key takeaway.
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah, the more you understand the risks, how to protect yourself,
Right.
the better equipped you'll be to navigate this crazy world.
It's a crazy world. Yeah, it's scary out there.
It is. It is.
But we can do it. We can protect ourselves.
We can. We
Yeah.
just have to be informed
Informed and vigilant.
and proactive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Me too.
We hope you did too,
Absolutely.
and that you feel more empowered to protect yourself and your finances.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time for another deep dive.